Derek Smith's career was the definition of a slow burn. After a solid 4 years at Louisville where he won a national championship as a sophomore, he was a second-round pick in 1982 by the Warriors. He rode the bench and was eventually released, but once he signed with the Clippers after an off-season workout, a small sample size at the end of his sophomore season convinced the team that he could be a gem. He proved them right in 1984, as he played like one of the best shooting guards in the NBA. Derek stood 6'6", weighing a solid 220 pounds. And this frame, combined with his speed and athleticism, made him nearly unguardable on his drive to the rim. His physical style of play punished any defender that tried to stand in his way, but if you sagged off, he could light you up from the mid-range. His defensive instincts made him a complete player, so the Clippers felt like they had their franchise guy. Derek also had a competitive rivalry with rookie Michael Jordan, as he outperformed him the first time they matched up. He had earned Jordan's respect, and he was well on his way to being a superstar in the league. But 9 games into his 4th season, he blew out his knee and he would never be the same player again. Derek would fall out with the Clippers and bounce around between the Kings and the Sixers, with his body continuing to break down. He was literally on his last legs when he signed with the Celtics, as he had to get an injection right before their playoff game against the Pacers. His suffocating defense on Chuck Person in Game 5 would help them advance, making this the final great moment in a promising career that was ruined by injury. Welcome to PG Hoops, and let's get down to it. Derek was born on November 1st, 1961 in Hogansville, Georgia. He wouldn't play basketball until the 8th grade, and even though he was one of the tallest guys on the team, his high school coach made him do guard drills. His athletic ability helped him become a nice player, winning 2 state titles. Derek had been recruited by Louisville since his junior year, and since he started grade school early, he was 16 years old in the beginning of his freshman year with the Cardinals. This Louisville team had a lot of NBA talent, with Roger Bertman, Jerry Eves, and Scooter McCrae, but they were led by Daryl Griffith. Derek came off the bench, as Louisville was one of the top teams in the country. They even had a 13-game winning streak during the season, finishing at 23-6. The Cardinals lost to Virginia Tech in the conference tournament, but they still got an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament. Despite being only 17 years old, Derek had a solid freshman season, averaging 10 points, 5 rebounds, and 1 assist on 63% shooting. He would be a starter in the first tournament game against South Alabama, and he dropped 8 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists in a close win for Louisville. They faced Sidney Moncrief and the Razorbacks in the regional semifinal, as their stingy defense held Louisville to 39% shooting. The Cards lost by double digits, as Derek went 0 for 4 from the field. Scooter's younger brother Rodney joined the team in 1979, and Derek was the permanent starter. in what would be a magical season for Louisville. The Cardinals were a very balanced team, as the abundance of elite athletes on their roster allowed them to play at a fast pace while also locking down defensively. They went on an 18-game winning streak during the season, and they would finish 26-3. They beat Memphis and Florida State in the conference tournament to win the Metro. While Daryl established himself as an All-American, Derek continued to quietly improve, averaging 15 points, 8.5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1.5 steals, as Louisville took on Kansas State in their first tournament game. Derek led the team in scoring, dropping 20 points and 7 rebounds, but Tony Branch was the hero, draining a 15-foot jumper with 2 seconds left to win the game, as this was his only field goal. Derek had an off night against Texas A&M, but he still stuffed the stat sheet with 6 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists in an easy win for the Cards. Louisville wouldn't be a challenge, as he put up 13 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 assists. In the Final Four against Iowa, he had 13 points, 8 rebounds, and 2 assists, and Louisville won to make the national title game. They faced UCLA, but the Bruins had a rough shooting night. Although Daryl was the only double-digit scorer for them, Derek had a decent contribution, with 9 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 steals, as the Cardinals won their first national title in school history. Daryl left for the NBA in 1980, but the Cards added more pro-level talent, with Lancaster Gordon and Charles Jones. Derek would now be the leader of the team as a junior, but they couldn't have started the season any worse, winning just 1 of their first 7 games. They were 6-8 at the end of January, but they were also 3-1 in the Metro. They then flipped the switch, winning 12 straight games to save their season. They beat Virginia Tech and Cincinnati in the conference tournament, as somehow Louisville came back from the basement to make the big dance again. Derek averaged 16 points, 8 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and a steal. Their title defense would be short-lived, however, as in their first game against Arkansas, Derek had a solid performance, with 10 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists, but U.S. Reed would clip the Cardinals' wings, nailing a buzzer beater with no time left to help the Razorbacks advance. Freshman Milt Wagner joined the Cards in 1981 as they looked to redeem themselves. Louisville won their first 5 games, finishing the season at 18-8. They beat St. Louis and Florida State in the Metro tournament, but they lost to Memphis in the championship game. They still received an at-large bid to the NCAA tournament, as Derek averaged 16 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. The first game against Middle Tennessee was an easy win, as Derek dropped 17 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals. He had 17 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals in the win against Minnesota. He dropped 14 and 6 with 2 blocks against Alabama Birmingham. They finally met their match in Georgetown, being held to only 46 points in the loss. Derek had 10 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 blocks in this game. Derek was good enough to play in the NBA, but since he never really dominated at Louisville, his draft stock was up in the air. He was taken in the second round by the Golden State Warriors, as coach Al Attles had him playing the power forward position. Even though he was a great athlete, he was only 6'6", so playing down low, especially in the NBA, was pretty difficult for him. But he couldn't play a guard either, as Sleepy Floyd, World B. Free, and Michael Ray Richardson occupied these positions. He only averaged about 6 minutes a game, so his best performance was on April 13th against the Clippers, with 10 points and 7 rebounds. As per usual during this time, the Warriors were bad, only winning 30 games. Derek's rookie season saw him average 2 points and 1.5 rebounds. Although he was waived in the offseason, his former teammates praised his work ethic and motor. First-year Clippers coach Jim Lynam brought Derek in for a workout over the summer. He showed off his insane athleticism, throwing down several powerful dunks, and while Jim was impressed, he wanted to see Derek's jump shot. Staying at the top of the key, he was pretty consistent. Jim asked him to take a few dribbles first, and Derek continued to knock down his shots. It was that the heat index of the gym was close to 120 degrees, but Derek pushed through it like it was nothing. This was enough to convince the Clippers to sign him to a minimum contract. He was finally listed as a shooting guard, but Michael Brooks, Ricky Pierce, Craig Hodges, and Greg Kelser all competed for a spot alongside Norm Nixon in the backcourt. Up until the end of January, Derek was a solid reserve, playing about 12 minutes a game. Michael Brooks went down with a knee injury, and Derek finally got an opportunity, as over the last 18 games of the season, he came out of nowhere, dropping 6 20-point games in that span, including a game against the Lakers where he put up 26 points on 13 of 17 shooting. The Clippers were still bad, but they might have found their new 2-guard of the future, as Derek averaged 10 points, 3 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. Before their first season in LA, the Clippers traded Terry Cummings to the Bucks for Marcus Johnson. They also drafted Michael Cage and Derek's college teammate Lancaster Gordon. Derek was a full-time starter in 1984, and he was producing well early on. But November 30th was a highly anticipated day, as the Clippers faced the Bulls, who had just drafted another super athletic 6'6" guard, and their matchup was must-watch TV. Chicago was victorious today, but Derek dropped 33 points on 12 of 17 shooting, compared to Mike's 20. They faced off again in March, as the Bulls would win again, and Michael had the upper hand this time, dropping 26 to Derek's 23. Mike would say in the media, sure, he's unknown, but that doesn't mean he's not rock solid. Derek had already been on a tear the whole year, averaging 27 points a game on 58% shooting in the last 2 months of the season, even dropping a career-high 41 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals on April 3rd against Kansas City. Derek's career year placed him in the top 20 in points, field goal percentage, and free throws. It was a great personal season for Derek, but the Clippers were still far from competitive, finishing 31 and 51. Derek averaged 22 points, 5.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and a steal. The Clippers drafted Benoit Benjamin and signed former Finals MVP Cedric Maxwell in 1985, and Derek looked to build on last season. It seemed like he would, as he dropped 36 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 blocks on 14 of 19 shooting in the season opener. Through the first 9 games, he was playing out of his mind, but it all came grinding to a halt on November 13th against the Sonics. He was driving to the basket when he crashed to the floor, clutching his left knee and screaming in pain. He had torn cartilage, undergoing arthroscopic surgery soon after, but the rehab process wasn't going so smoothly, so Derek began to have some friction with the organization. He came back and tried to play 2 games in December, but his recovery was delayed again. It also didn't help that he contracted mono, even having to defend himself against people claiming that he was faking his illness. Along with a dispute over unpaid bonus money, the Clippers lowballed him in free agency, offering him a 7-year contract worth $5 million. The Kings sent him an offer sheet worth $4.5 million over 5 years, and the Clippers didn't match it, receiving Mike Woodson and Larry Drew as compensation. The Kings signed Derek to be the savior of the franchise, but he wasn't the same explosive athlete anymore, as he had a chronically sore left knee that had developed tendonitis. He still had a nice Kings debut with 18 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. 2 weeks later, he dropped 26 points, 4 rebounds, a career-high 10 assists, and 2 steals. A month after that, he put up 31 points on 10 of 17 shooting. He was still putting up solid numbers, but his knee continued to bother him as he missed 30 games. Derek averaged 17 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 4 assists. The Kings hired Bill Russell as their head coach, while Kenny Smith was their top draft pick in 1987. Derek's knee would keep him on the sidelines for most of the season, as he only played in 35 games, but he did have a week in March where he averaged 26 points on 58% shooting and 46% from deep. This year was essentially a wash for Derek and the team, as the Kings finished 24-58. Derek averaged 13 points, 3 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. He was wearing out his welcome in Sacramento, as the team had given up 2 key players in order to get him, and after 2 lackluster seasons, the organization was disappointed with his declining production. The situation didn't get much better in 1988, as an argument between Derek and Jerry Reynolds led to him getting suspended. Then his contract was bought out. The Sixers, who were coached by Jim Lynam, quickly signed Derek. He had undergone 3 major knee surgeries at this point, so it took a lot for him just to get on the court. Barkley did his best carry job this year, as the Sixers were 46-36, and Derek would finally make his playoff debut. Between the two teams, he averaged 9 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 2 assists. They faced the Knicks in the first round, and they had a small role in this series. But although the games were close, the Sixers were swept. Derek was finally healthy in 1989, but he could only play about 19 minutes a game. He was still an efficient player, even if he relied on his jump shot a little bit more. With the Sixers essentially having a playoff berth locked in, Derek even started a few games in March, and he was highly productive, even dropping the season-high 20 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals in the 16th. Barkley and Hersey Hawkins were leading the offense, but the other guys helped anchor the defense, as Philly was pretty balanced, finishing with a 53-29 record, their best in 4 years. Derek averaged 9 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. He was cooking in Game 1 versus Cleveland, with 11 points in 15 minutes so far, but his knee issues would pop up again, and this was it for him in the postseason. The Sixers lost to the Bulls in the second round, as one could only speculate the duel between a completely healthy Derek and Michael in the playoffs. Even though his time in Philly was mostly ruined by injuries, Charles Barkley admired Derek's heart and perseverance, saying, "Derek is one of the few people I really admire. He's been through more adversity than any human being." Derek underwent another knee surgery in September of 1990, and he was still recovering when the Celtics called him to join the team as a veteran presence. Even though he only played in 2 games the entire season, he was included on the playoff roster. In the first round series against Indiana, Derek had spot minutes in the first 4 games, as the series was tied heading into a do-or-die Game 5. Coach Chris Ford let Derek play some extended minutes. He was really on his last legs, no pun intended, as his knees were wrapped up in a huge pad, temporarily numbed by an injection before the game. Derek's job was to stop Chuck Person at all costs, as he dropped 39 in Game 2 with 7 threes. His knee limited his mobility, so Derek tested the limits of a hand check rule, holding, grabbing, shoving, whatever he needed to do to get Chuck off his game. Chuck still went off though, dropping 32 points, but Derek's last effort of defense forced him to miss the game-tying 3-pointer. Boston had advanced, and Larry Bird was raving about Derek's performance. His knee kept him sidelined for most of the second round against Detroit, but the Celtics lost in 6 games. Derek was offered an extension by the Celtics, but he decided to retire, as he wanted to be able to play with his son Nolan. 3 years later, Jim Lynam had asked Derek to return to the league as his assistant coach for the Bullets. He agreed, only on the condition that he could bring Nolan with him. Over the next 2 years, he had earned the respect of the players and had great impacts on the improvements of future All-Stars Chris Webber, Juwan Howard, and Rasheed Wallace. On August 9, 1996, he was on a team cruise with season ticket holders of the Bullets and the Capitals. He took his family along with him, as he and Tim Legler had volunteered to hold basketball clinics during the cruise. Derek was seated in the lounge talking to a group of people when his head suddenly dropped mid-sentence. Medical personnel tried to revive him for 30 minutes, but Derek was declared dead at only 34 years old. In the autopsy, an abnormality in the valve of his heart was detected, but this somehow wasn't discovered during his several knee surgeries. Derek's sudden passing shocked the basketball world, as a player that left it all out there on the court left us too soon. On a more positive note, his son Nolan went on to have a great career at Duke, even playing in the NBA for a few years, as he is now in the coaching world just like his dad. Derek Smith's rise to success in the NBA was far from a straightforward journey, going from a second-round pick to getting cut, to working his way up from the bottom of the Clippers rotation. Once he got his opportunity to play, he really unleashed his entire skill set for the league to witness. He used his strength to muscle his defenders out of the way on his drive to the rim. He had the athletic ability to finish over the top, while also being a great defender. He had all the tools to be a next-grade shooting guard in the league, but a knee injury would halt all his momentum. Since his game was heavily reliant on his physical tools, he had to change the way he played, while his knee continued to bother him for the rest of his career. After playing the best playoff game of his life on essentially one leg, he called it quits to be a family man, until he was called to help develop several young stars. He wasn't just a great player, he was a great teammate, as a lot of his peers had nothing but positive things to say about him. Although he left us too soon, his infectious work ethic and perseverance through all of his adversity should be an important lesson to all of us. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate y'all. I look at Derek Smith and the way he played. It seems like his game was one of the closest that I've ever seen to Jordan's game. Like, he played just like Jordan. But it's just the way he played downhill. He was aggressive. He just attacked the rim. You know, he could still shoot the ball from the outside. He was a great defender. He was a good passer. He's a good rebounder. Very strong guard. He really could have been great. Injuries, man, part of the game. Also, him playing defense on Chuck Person was admirable because he was basically on one leg. Like, you can see when he's playing, you can see how much he's limping. And whatever that shot was is wore off by now. R.I.P. Derek Smith, man. It sucks that he died so young. When I heard his son was Nolan Smith, I'm like, oh, I know who Nolan Smith is. But I'm glad Nolan is doing great things. Because he was nice at Duke. I remember him at Duke. He was really nice at Duke. Thank you guys. I really appreciate y'all. Leave a like if you enjoy. That subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Turn my post notifications on. I'm out. Peace.